And in fact, the thing, I think you could make an argument that the thing is kind of like a shoggoth, right?
Yeah,
Because
you could really, couldn't you?
yeah,
It's a
it's
plastic
formless,
and
it's imitative, it could be quite an amazing biotechnological tool that also happens to have intelligence.
yeah,
Um,
and Carpenter, of course, is quite the Lovecraft fan, so it's
yeah.
you know,
No, it makes a lot of sense to go that way, although it's also much, much closer to the original short
yes,
story.
he goes there
Um,
by Cap John Campbell, Joseph Campbell.
yeah, Campbell, definitely. John Campbell, John W. Campbell.
That's the one, yeah.
Yes, not Joseph Campbell. That would be an interesting hero's journey. The hero's
Yeah,
journey
yes.
in this case is to get infected and turn into somebody else who doesn't know that there's somebody else. Because
Yeah,
yeah, that's the thing that I find really fascinating about the thing is that it's pseudopods that it buds off. You know, each one is a copy of it and a copy of whatever it's imitating. And, you know, when MacReady says, well, if I was a, no, actually, it's not
it's
MacReady,
Childs, isn't it?
it's Childs who
That was an
says,
imitation, a perfect imitation.
how would I know? You know, and the fact is, you wouldn't know at all, you know, and thus Peter Watts's brilliant piece of fan fiction, award-winning fan fiction, The Things.
Oh, I think I've read that. I can't remember if I've read that or not.
Yeah,
Isn't it? Is that the one where it's like at the end, and the idea is that both MacReady and Childs are
yeah,
things, but don't neither realizes the other ones.
yeah, is a thing, and they're both things that don't realize that they're things, and they're, you know, because everything is a thing and they're all the same thing, there seems to be this sort of um, back of the head intelligence that they all or personality that they all share,
Yeah,
and it is the thing that is looking at all its pseudopods and experiencing stuff through them, but also having its own thoughts,
yeah.
and some, you know, two of which are, oh my god, these creatures must be so lonely. Yes. And the other one of which is that, you know, yeah, if you know, if I want to if I want to show them how ridiculous this idea is, I'm going to have to rape it into them on a
Wow.
yeah, on a molecule by molecule basis. Yeah.
Still reminds me of one of the most bizarre threats I ever saw on a YouTube comment thread there that it was an argument about music, and someone said this band of shit, blah blah, and someone commented, "I will rape you into intelligence." And on the one hand,
Jesus.
that's kind of like that's an awful thing, and obviously nobody should be threatening somebody with
Yes.
sexual assault. But at the same
Yes.
time, you're thinking, how does that work exactly? Or
How
how's it
does
supposed
that
to
work?
work?
Well, you know, I mean, again, you could make an argument that brainwashing somebody is kind of like raping their intelligence, raping their mind. You know, just like yeah, it's back to the Ipcris file. My name is Harry Palmer.
But anyway, back to all the white space.
Okay, back to all the white spaces. So, John and Harry on Randall's expedition. Um, John is eventually found. He's a stowaway, but he's able to impress himself on Australis Randall, and who, you know, it's like obsession recognizes obsession, game
Yeah,
recognizes game, and becomes one of the crew. Essentially, you know, they stop talking about letting him off at the at the last stop pretty quick.
yeah,
You know, and it's and but from the very beginning, there is this feeling that there is a shadow on the trip, and there's a shadow on the ship itself. And as they get closer and closer to their goal, which is essentially following the same route that I think the Germans were supposed to be following,
yeah,
to this, you know, there's this point that people talk about a lot, which actually comes up very heavily in the Korean movie Antarctic Journal, which I believe was written by Bong Joon-ho. Not directed by him, but written by him, and which is very much about, we're gonna go up to Antarctica. We're gonna and try and figure out where the point of no return is.
Yeah.
There is no point on the map where you can say this far and no further, because otherwise, if you keep going, then you will not have enough supplies to get back to where to warm warm places. You will just keep going, and you will inevitably die. And and it's a bit there's a bit of crossover as well, because in Antarctic Journal, they are following the track of a lost expedition, which definitely white guys, I believe British guys, I might be wrong, and eventually they sort of find themselves trapped in almost like a loop where they're doomed to play out the same expedition. It's not so much that they see ghosts as they sort of become the ghosts.
Wow, I like that idea.
Yeah, no, and it's on Tubi right now. It's been a while since I saw it, but it's absolutely worth the seeing. And I believe it is still in their international section. So check it if you want to see people dying in the snow, because who doesn't? Apparently, a lot of people do.
I mean, one of the things that struck me about this whole kind of like this kind of frozen horror thing is there is this, as well as that whole liminal idea of crossing over into some sort of space where here be dragons or whatever. It's
this band of death, this place where humans are just not supposed to go. Yeah, this far, no further.
There's also a stripping away of all the kind of accoutrements of civilization, of a technological society, of everything. It takes away all your reference points, and as you said, you're in an environment that without any kind of supernatural intervention will fucking kill you, one way or the other, in any number of ways. It'll, some if there isn't anything there that will eat you, there is something there that will fucking just basically freeze your bits off.
And when we say freeze your bits off, we are absolutely explicitly correct. And, it's like we've already seen with all the white spaces that some of the crew members have, lost toes and lost fingers and, the tip of a nose or whatever. And Australis Randall, I think himself, has lost stuff. And
scarred down one side of the face from frostbite.
Where he froze to something and then
jump into the sea to get somebody out or something like that.
That's right, something along those lines. And so basically, what you're always dealing with on a trip like this, and what you're always dealing with what you're always dealing with when you're writing a story like this is that everything is about management. It's about how small and ostensibly hyper-controlled the interior is, and how huge and uncontrollable the exterior is.
Yeah.
And, that you're fighting against the limits of your own body, the limits of your own mind, and whatever random chaos the world is going to throw at you.
And that's the deprivation element as well, which it's easier to tell to her, kind of like in a different sort of subgenre, but in the world of The Descent. I mean, it's one of the things that Shauna McDonald's character is warned about as she's going down. You can hallucinate. You when you're down there in the dark, there's it causes all sorts of psychological impacts to that kind of being put into what is basically this very inimical environment where you're shut off from a lot of the sensory input that you normally
exactly. You can go blind from sun glare off the ice. You can go blind inside a whiteout because your eyes will freeze. I know, it's like but it's such a in a lot of ways it is a very male idea to test yourself against, a male and a colonial idea to test yourself as a British person, as a civilized person, to test yourself against the most wild area that you can find, and to test yourself against this challenge, where every fucking step is a challenge, and
to penetrate the, as you say, the interior, which a very male sort of
yeah, well, there is that. Yeah, it's like, please don't fuck the snow, just don't.
Frank Zappa just told people not to eat it, but
Yeah.
apparently we have to, do not try to fuck that.
Don't drill a hole in the ice and fuck it. It's not a good idea.
I think you've got a story prompt there.
Yeah, exactly.
So many of your characters are basically driven by wanting to fuck something or be fucked by something.
That's true. That is sadly true. So we've got, so the central play out essentially is like, as we move into this area where we're moving into a cycle of complete darkness. The sun goes down and it's not going to come up again for however many months. And you are pitted against this night that only exacerbates your own problems, your own psychological problems. Harry starts seeing ghosts, and John has wanted to see his brothers, and Harry has been seeing his brothers.
Yeah.
And the problem is that every time he sees John's brothers, the brothers are telling him to do things, and spoiler alert, not a good idea. Everybody has somebody that they're seeing. Everybody has something whispering to them. And all the, I don't want to go much further than we already have, because it's an amazing book and you really need to read it. But, the normal routine of, or the normal template of an Arctic/Antarctic horror is that you will lose everything. Everything will be pared away. You will lose your ship, you will lose your fellows, you will lose.
They said you will lose your shit, but that will happen as well.
Yeah, you also lose your shit, quite likely. You will walk into the darkness, you will walk into the blinding whiteness, you will walk into the place that you should not be and find that you should not be there. There's a huge intersection between cosmic horror and Arctic/Antarctic horror, or indeed extremophile horror. Like,
oh God, yeah. It can bring all these things together on the purely on the physical. There's kind of physical survival horror. There's the psychological impact of it, and then there is this kind of like where we're in this emptiness, this desolation. What else is in this coming out of this void? And I was watching a documentary about sort of rather strange case from the 30s called the Galapagos Affair as well. If you've not heard of it, it's worth checking out. It's a couple moved to live on this very small, isolated island in the Galapagos, and then another couple turned up, and then shortly afterwards, this self-styled baroness showed up with two male lovers in tow, and proclaimed herself to be the queen of the island, I think, and was going to open a hotel, and then she and one of her lovers disappeared. And have never been found. And the other lover eventually persuaded another fisherman to take him off the island, and they disappeared and were later found having basically been wrecked on another island, having died of thirst, which was pretty grim. And then one of the bloke from one of the original couple. The first couple there died, and there was all this debate over whether he'd been poisoned by his partner or by someone else. So there's all these kind of mysteries. Yeah. One of the things
there's this feeling of balance and imbalance. It's like, okay, so one couple is okay, two couples are okay, and then three couples, one of which is not a couple in a recognizable way. Not okay. And then everything cascades from that. And similarly, I think with Arctic/Antarctic horror, there is this sense of balance versus imbalance, you know.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I was thinking about from this from the documentary I was watching on it, because it had interviews with with some of the surviving people from that time, or their children, their descendants. And one of them was, when you sort of people go to live on an island or whatever, they're trying to get away from all the problems of sort of life. But of course, if you're part of the problem, or some of the problems are you, then you're just going to take them with you. And when you've got when you've got this small population, even these kind of small antagonisms can eventually turn into what's effectively warfare. You basically get a war kind of breaking out in this little community, and although they're not like stranded on a little island, in a way they effectively are in all the right spaces, because it's so you have to create a space, and as you say, it's about management. You have to be able to create a space in which you can
manageable space. Yes, absolutely, where life can be sustained. And sometimes you may find yourself in a position where you're like, well, Bob's gone insane. Maybe we should just let him run out into the snow and die, because we can't do anything about that. And Bob might cause other people to go insane, or he might take all the food and hide it, or whatever. By the way, that doesn't happen in the book. No. I'm blue skying here.
It's kind of like the Everest thing as well, isn't it? That beyond a certain, when you get into the death zone, which is kind of the clue is in the name, really. If somebody else gets into difficulties, you can't stop and help them, because you are, at every moment that you are above 8,000 feet or whatever it is, your body is beginning to die. This is you have limited time to get up that fucking slope, get to the summit, and then get down again.
Speaking of which, we should do mountaineering horror.
Oh yeah,
we should totally do that. Thin Air by Michelle Paver is her mountaineering horror book, and we could talk about Touching the Void as well. But lay that by.
Yes, you mentioned
and with with a lot of these scenarios, it's about who can be brought along, who has to be left behind, who has damaged themselves beyond saving. When do you let go of the Britishisms, of the colonizer mentality? Let's switch momentarily to the terror.
Yeah, I was going to say that kind of the colonizer bit, kind of.
Yeah, the colonizer mentality.
We were talking about this a bit before, weren't we? About how they might have survived if they'd actually been able to let go of that mentality to an extent.
Basically, yeah, because we all know that not just from Simmons's book or the wonderful adaptation, but we know generally from history that one of the biggest things that happened was that they were essentially poisoning themselves with lead cans, and all of the food that they brought along was poisonous, and lead was building up in their systems. They were afraid of discarding their food because they felt that they could not find food anywhere they felt that this was a completely unlivable area, and that there was no alternative to continuing to eat poison that happened to have British labels on it. And the fact is, people live in that place. It's like they're doing okay. It's like, and what I love about the adaptation is that essentially the only person who survives is the person who allows himself to be taken in by the eunuch.
Basically, so it gives up his identity as Francis Crozier and becomes whatever he's.
Exactly. And so instead of being an invasive creature, almost like a virus that's upsetting the ecology, that's imbalancing the ecology that he has invaded, he becomes part of that ecology,
Yeah.
and therefore survives, and therefore has a child, and therefore builds a life for himself, but not the kind of life where he could go back to the UK. Not
Yeah,
the kind of life where he could go back to the Empire and go like, yeah, so I fucked up. It's like everybody died. Sorry about that. Please give me another ship.
Yeah, I think the TV adaptation is kind of explicit on that, because it has. I don't think there's an equivalent scene in the book at the very ending. I think we're going to assume that people have seen the.
Yeah, I think we're going to assume that people have seen.
Where essentially the people turn up looking for survivors from the Franklin expedition. Yeah. He's sitting there, he can hear them, and he
doesn't say anything.
Yeah,
it's like, that's not me. That's not me anymore.